All right, today is Thursday, June 21, 2018. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and posted on YouTube. Today on the agenda, we have Q3 Kubernetes V12 planning. I went in yesterday, created a new tab for the 1.12 quarter for the 1.12 release in our planning spreadsheet, and I sent a message to folks to go ahead and start adding items there, and I pre-populated it with some of the items that I know about. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at that. We've got a number of items under design reviews today. I'm not sure if we're going to have time to get to that. If we don't, we can either punt them to the next meeting, or you can set up one-off meetings to discuss them with the SIG. So let's go ahead and move over to the planning spreadsheet for 112 and start from the very top. So first up, we have block volume support to beta. This is a feature that we intended to go to beta this past quarter, but weren't able to get it in. So it looks like Matthew Wong is going to be working on that. Who wants to be assigned as the reviewer for this? Brad, are you the right person?
Sure.
Cool, thank you. Something else I was thinking about was support for Windows in general. We've kind of not really thought about that, and we haven't had too many folks from Windows for Microsoft attend this SIG. But before we take block volumes to beta, it might be worth thinking about what block on Windows looks like. I actually have no idea. Is it okay for me to assign this to Matt as well to consider as part of the design, or does somebody else want to take a look at it?
Sure, we have the resources to fully vet that, to be honest.
Okay.
Are we talking about this on Azure, or are you talking about this like on Windows 10?
I don't know. I was thinking just Windows 10 or Windows whatever. What does a block device look like on that? Because apparently Kubernetes now works on Windows. I have no idea what that means, but it might be something that we should probably look into. Is there anyone from Microsoft or anybody interested in Windows on this SIG?
I think most of the Microsoft storage people are based in China, so they won't be able to attend this meeting. I don't know if we should just summarize all the little things and like send an email to them or something.
Mm-hmm. Following the GitHub issues and stuff, it seems like Andy Zhang from Microsoft, like he follows storage.
Yeah. He sends a lot of PRs and stuff, and he's based in China. So maybe we should just open an issue with like all the Windows features and ping him on it and see if they have resources.
That seems reasonable. Deep, would you be willing to volunteer to do that?
Sure, I can follow up.
Okay. I'll put your name down temporarily on this, and then if you can find someone to take ownership of this and any related Windows issues, that would be great. Thank you. All right, next up is topology dynamic provisioning to beta. Michelle is going to be the reviewer on this. Is anybody interested in actually helping with the feature? Do you have anybody in mind?
Yeah, there's been some people already that have been working on this, so I think they can continue. I think it's if you just copy
Got it.
here, yeah.
Sure.
But the main thing, I think the main criteria here is in order for this to go to beta, we really need an Entry plugin to implement it, and we need tests for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is going to be a blocker for beta.
Okay. So dependent.
I already wrote that
okay.
up there. Yeah.
Perfect. Actually, before we move forward, I wanted to make sure we add priorities as well. Right now, this is P1. Seems reasonable to me.
I marked it as a P1 because CSI depends on it.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of other features dependent on this, so I think we need to, in order to unblock those features, we need to get this rolling.
Seems reasonable to me. And I think block support to beta also a P1. Brad, Matt, would you guys agree?
Yes.
Cool. And then I'll leave the block support for Windows as a P2 and
I would think we'd want to run that through an alpha phase anyways.
yeah. All right, cool. Next up is topology support for Kubernetes to CSI. So CSI makes implementing new features in Kubernetes interesting because they first need to be implemented in the CSI spec, then they need to be implemented in Kubernetes, then the sidecar containers need to be updated to support them, and then the drivers need to be updated to support the feature. The core topology support logic went into Kubernetes last quarter, and the CSI spec was updated last quarter to support topology. The work here is to update the sidecar containers to support topology, and Cheng has signed up for that work, and I can help review that. We can call that alpha. Next up is modification to the CSI spec to add support for volume expansion. This was work that got started last quarter and didn't complete. And Hemant, are you still interested in driving that?
Yep.
Great. What do we want to call the priority for that work? 2 seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. I don't think we need a feature tracking that since it's a CSI spec change, and same thing here.
What does it mean for a CSI spec change to be alpha?
When CSI goes GA, it will go GA. So everything pre 1.0 is going to be considered alpha. It's a weird designation, but it's kind of what we have right now. Next up are the driver related changes. The AWS EBS CSI driver does not exist. I think Jan or somebody was expecting to pick that up. Is that still the case for this quarter?
Yep, Fabio from our side's working on it.
Fabio.
Bertinato.
Could you fill in his name here?
Yeah, I'll fill it in.
Perfect, thanks. And the person to review it would be Jan?
Yes.
Perfect. Priority-wise, I'm gonna go ahead and mark this as a 1 because eventually we want to get the entry drivers out, and this is gonna be a dependency for that. Would folks agree with that priority?
Yes.
Cool, cool. We'll go ahead and call that alpha. Since this is not an in-tree Kubernetes feature, I don't think it needs a feature repo bug. Next up are the Azure drivers that are currently in tree. One's called Azure Disk and the other is Azure File. Are there any volunteers to build CSI drivers for that?
I can follow up with Andy about that as part of the other follow-up.
Okay. Yeah. I'll put your name with a question mark next to it, and then we can reassign as needed. I think those are also P1s for the same reason.
Deep is going to have his name on a lot of stuff.
All right, thank you, Deep. Next up are the GCPD CSI driver. So we already have a CSI driver. Currently is checked into Kubernetes SIGs. And for this quarter, we want to continue to extend it, add support for topology. David has agreed to work on that. And I can help review. Actually, Michelle, would you be interested in reviewing the topology support?
Sure. Or would Cheng want to?
Oh, that's a good idea too. Let's put Cheng's name down for now.
Yeah, I can definitely review. Same for REP integration.
Perfect. And then raw block device support. Cheng is going to help implement that on our side. Vlad, would you be interested in helping review that? This will also give you a concrete driver to test against.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
So Saad, I see we're missing NFS fiber channel iSCSI from this list.
We have those drivers, but it's probably worth having an item to figure out what we want to do with them next. So I know we've been talking about, I think at the last face-to-face, building out an NFS Common Library, an iSCSI Common Library, and potentially a fiber channel Common Library. Are folks interested in picking up that work this quarter?
So I have a potential candidate. I won't know until later this afternoon, but I possibly have someone that's going to pick this up.
Okay.
So this has been, I volunteered to do the NFS work. I'm still available to do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's
I'll write your name down. Feel free to update that.
The other thing that I think might be useful is refactoring our Kubernetes mount utilities, so we can separate it out into the actual mount utilities with Kubernetes specific stuff, and then we can pull just the mount part out so that the CSI driver, all the CSI drivers can use that library. Because right now, I think all the CSI drivers are just copying or vendoring in the whole entire Kubernetes mount library. So it'd probably be good to try to clean that up and separate it out.
It's a little bit old at this point, but one thing I can say there is that originally some people that I was working with did some 0.1 CSI drivers, and we had a common utility for doing mount. And it was originally based off of the Kubernetes implementation. So there might be some common work that can be leveraged there.
Yeah.
Don't have to start from scratch.
And I think also definitely we don't have to start from scratch. And I think it would be good. I think it would be good to also clean up the Entry Kubernetes mount code to also kind of refactor that library. That way we don't have two copies of the same library. Like Kubernetes could actually pull from an outside mount library too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, what I was gonna say is the thing I don't know is who will be consuming it and I would need to coordinate with if I was gonna write one of these common libraries. So obviously we would want Kubernetes to be one of the consumers, but any drivers that would need to pull from it, we would want to make sure that.
So there is a Kubernetes NFS driver. If you go to Kubernetes CSI. And
Yeah. I mean, so there's some obvious ones, but I was wondering, are there any other implementations of NFS drivers? I mean, I know the NetApp one does. We have NFS stuff. The same thing with iSCSI. So we want to make sure that to get all the interested parties together, or at least have a list of interested parties. So once we have something, I can pass it around and say, hey, what do you guys think of this?
Yep. That makes sense.
I think a good candidate for these common libraries that could be used by both Entry Kubernetes and CSI drivers would be the Kubernetes SIG repo.
So Ben, I would suggest sending a message to the Storage SIG mailing list and asking if there are folks interested. I'm sure there will be.
Okay.
What kind of feedback you get.
The only other thing I'll say is if we have a mount library, then there may not be anything for NFS Common, because all you really need for NFS is to be able to mount. And if we have a general use.
Yeah, it's likely going to be very slim based on the NFS entry driver.
So maybe we should focus on the mount library first. Refactoring Entry Kubernetes to pull out the mount.
Speaking
and I think
of
there's already a bug open for it, I think.
Is anybody interested in doing that? This will be code that will be potentially used by every single CSI driver, so very impactful.
I'm not making a good sales pitch.
I'd say I'm not sure if you want to give it to someone new or not, but since we had already taken a stab at this at one of my previous jobs, I think kind of already have it. So I wouldn't mind volunteering for it.
Sorry, who's speaking?
Sorry, this is Travis Roden.
Oh, Travis. Okay, perfect.
Nice.
Travis. All right. Overall, I think priority-wise, this would be a P2. If we get it in, that would be awesome. If not, not the end of the world. We can call it alpha. These alpha, beta, GA designations, like Michelle mentioned, are getting a little strange because these components are out of tree.
I wanted to clarify. I think this is going to involve Kubernetes work too.
Right.
Because we want to have Kubernetes consume this as well.
Okay. So you would have to go back in all the drivers and entry drivers and
no, I think it's actually, we just need to like pull out the interfaces, or you pull out the implementation of the interfaces and separate out. Right now, the mounter interface in Kubernetes has non-mounting stuff in it. I think we just need to separate that a little better.
Would it be fair to come up with a design first, and then so we can agree of what those demarcations are?
Sure.
Yeah, let's call it a stretch goal to get the implementation done this quarter. If you only get the design, at least we got something. But we'll call it alpha for now and then reassess later.
Okay.
Do you want to be the reviewer for this?
I can review this. I think I have a good idea of actually what needs to be done. So.
Cool. And then hopefully Ben can reuse some of that work.
And there's already an issue open for this, and a PR actually with some a first attempt of a PR, but we had a lot of comments on that one. So
maybe somebody can link to that issue.
I'll try to remember to do that.
Who's interested in helping review the NFS Common Library?
Well, I think like Ben said, it might not be needed if we end up having a generic mount library potentially.
Okay.
Oh.
So
we should keep a placeholder here in case we realize there are some things that need to be outside the mount library. But yeah, this could end up being 0 lines of code.
Okay, I'll put myself.
CSI plugin, right? Library or no library?
Right. So it could just be a very thin wrapper on top of the mount library, or if it's so thin that it's just not adding anything, we could decide that the consumers will just consume the mount library directly.
I think Brad was saying that we still need a general NFS CSI plugin.
Which we have. I guess, Brad, you're saying that there could still be work to modify the existing NFS driver, the CSI driver.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, to use the mount library, most likely.
Well, I mean, right now the NFS driver is listed as prototype or something. Is that right?
Prototype or alpha, I forget. Something like that, yeah.
Well, there's a CSI NFS driver that actually will do provisioning. The one that's absolutely necessary is just the one that does attaching. So we might want to have a separate one that only does attaching and doesn't know how to provision at all, and that would be the one that all the existing NFS external provisioners or dynamic provisioners would use.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking for the NFS Common Library.
Well, and so there's a maintenance item on this, right? That we need to keep the NFS library up to the CSI spec level, right? It's stuff we have on our CSI, the Cube CSI tracking list that nobody signed up for. So somebody needs to bring it up to the 0.3 level and then probably 0.4 by the time we're done with 112.
Yes. So are you suggesting breaking this into 2 items?
Yeah, I mean, there's a maintenance component to it.
Okay.
And especially if Ben's going to own it going forward, it would be great to get him updating it to 0.3.
So we're saying we've got the CSI library development, and then there is on the CSI driver side, updating the NFS driver to use the lib. Oops. plus 0.
Is this the right document to track this, since we're already tracking it on CSI specific?
So I'm thinking moving forward this quarter, we use this document to keep track of the CSI specific work for transparency, and it's just becoming a mess in that document to keep track of.
Well, this driver is not going to be, it would be Kubernetes specific, wouldn't it? Am I,
Why is it Kubernetes specific?
well, it would be in the Kubernetes repo, even if
Right.
it's not tied to Kubernetes that tightly. It's still sort of owned and governed by Kubernetes.
At the moment, yes. So that's something we can consider in the future, is moving it out to somewhere even more common than Kubernetes repos. But I think what I've begun to learn is that folks don't mind if it's living in a Kubernetes repo.
Well, there's a hard dependency on, the Kubernetes will have a hard dependency on this driver. And so like, you don't want it to get screwed up, because that would break existing Kubernetes stuff.
Oh, you're saying this is the driver that we'll want to use to migrate Entry NFS.
Yeah. So you kind of need to maintain ownership of that.
Yep.
So you can.
So then it probably makes sense to leave it where it is today, which is under a Kubernetes repo. I think there's plans to split out. Currently, it's under Kubernetes-CSI/drivers, and there's a bunch of drivers underneath there, and there's plans to rip that repo open into separate repos for each individual driver. But it will all be under Kubernetes, so that makes sense. Ben, are you okay signing up for both items here?
Yeah.
Okay.
The NFS ones, and I was going to say I'll sign up for the iSCSI one too.
Nice.
John Griffith had volunteered at the face-to-face. I don't know if he's still interested. John, did you want to own the iSCSI one?
Yep, I'm still interested in that.
Okay.
So maybe I can assign you as the reviewer and John as the primary.
Okay.
Or vice versa, whatever you guys prefer.
Hey, we can both just work on it. I mean,
okay.
We'll see how it goes.
Feel free to swap if you feel the need.
Cool.
Awesome. Anyone interested in doing the same for the fiber channel common library?
I can definitely take it. I have somebody that can probably pick this up.
Awesome. I'll put your name down and then you can reassess. And do we want to do something similar like we did with NFS on updating the driver to consume it?
Yes.
And John, are you interested in working on that as well? Updating the consuming driver?
On
for iSCSI?
Oh, yeah. So is this the that target iSCSI driver that you're talking about?
This is the CSI iSCSI driver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, might as well. Sure.
Okay. So the idea here would be you're updating, you're basically creating a common library for iSCSI mounting,
right, and then update that example CSI driver code we have.
Precisely.
For iSCSI.
Yep.
Cool. Yep, that makes sense.
And then Brad, I'll do the same for the fiber channel one.
I'd just like to point out that testing all of these libraries is going to be a bit of a challenge, like to prevent regressions. I'm not sure what the plan is to do QA on the libraries themselves, other than just to run Kubernetes using the library and see if it breaks. It's probably not the best way to QA them.
So at least for the GCE CSI driver, David has started working on like a outside of Kubernetes CI setup that just brings up a VM without Kubernetes and just runs the driver in that VM environment. So something like that could potentially work for NFS. I'm not sure about iSCSI or Fiber Channel, but at least some parts might be able to be leveraged there.
I'm just envisioning, after all these libraries exist, someone will be fixing a bug and they'll introduce some kind of regression,
Yep.
And it'll be very hard to catch it unless you have all of the right tests, testing changes going into the libraries.
So I think we need some directed relaying around CSI. I mean, that's what you're coming up with, right? Is we need to figure out what's the build test process for these drivers, and which tests are we going to, run with each month.
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit heavy for this call. We want to maybe do that as a separate call or part of the.
Yeah, how about we get these drivers, the libraries written, the drivers updated, and then next quarter we take a task to come up with a way to actually write tests so we prevent future regressions.
Okay.
Kind of like our current EDE tests.
Yeah. I think the challenge is not in the writing of the test, it's the setting up of the environments, especially for things like fiber channel. That's always been a problem for us. So
should we have just an item here to like start investigating?
Yeah.
I like that because Jan's doing this work currently in Kubernetes, and I think it's going to be almost identical.
I know there was some work a while ago about getting the CNCF to set up like a test bed kind of thing across various environments.
Yeah.
I don't know if anything actually out of that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that got dropped.
So I did talk to Clint about VMware. Remember we talked about doing this on VMware?
Yeah.
He had some resources, but I haven't spoke with him yet.
I can, I'll bring that up back to Clint to see what we can do there.
Okay. I believe it was, actually now I was forgetting his name. Yeah, just have Clint ping me or whoever this resource was.
Yeah, actually we've been doing some work with bringing up testing environments just for VMware, the VMware specific Kubernetes stuff. So we'll see if what we can do there too.
Cool.
Who wants to pick up this item? It would require investigation and writing a doc, basically.
You can put me down if you add an S to my last name.
I can help with that.
I nominate Ben since he brought it up.
Yeah, and I would like to have Ben review it too.
Okay.
Not in.
Ben, would you be interested in helping review the fiber channel library that gets created?
I don't have a lot of fiber channel experience.
Okay. Do you think Wamin has the experience to review this, Brad?
Yeah, I'll definitely ask him to. I don't know if he'll formally do it, but.
Okay. Let me put his name down as question mark and then.
There was one person that was replacing Mitsuhiro. I think they mostly work on iSCSI and fiber channel. I don't know. He might be interested.
Okay, feel free to swap that out at a later point. Let's just put down a temporary placeholder. Okay, so that's all the CSI drivers and libraries.
Hey, so while we're on that topic, so for Azure File, that pretty much uses SMB. So should we have similar entries for like SMB CIFS as well as NFS?
Yeah, we can. If you think that there is going to be more than one consumer of that driver, it might be useful work.
Okay.
If you are willing to entertain that, I'm happy to add the item here.
Sure, let's add it.
Okay. Let me do it right. And then update Azure file. Okay, and then I'll put your name down on it. Is that okay, Deep?
Yeah.
Oops. And then we can get assigners once we know who the folks are that are going to be working on this. All right, cool. Next up is the Entry volume plugins that need to be updated to support Topology. So like I mentioned, Topology core framework went in last quarter. Currently, both AWS and GCE, and as I understand, Azure, basically have annotations as hacks to get around Topology. Now that we have a framework, we need to update these plugins to support this. Deep, did I add your name incorrectly to some of these by accident?
I think
No, so I was already working on those two
okay.
from the last release.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess, do you want me to give a quick status?
Sure, please.
Oh, so we were basically partially in. So we have a PR out for the admission controller work, and then the like actually getting the node and using the labels from them to assign to generate the PVs on that particular zone is work in progress. I should have a PR out by this week, and the next thing would be to use the allowed topologies.
Nice.
But as far as I'm aware, I think Azure does not quite have the concept of zones. So I'm not sure if.
Okay. Can you put someone else down as AWS reviewer?
Yes.
I don't really know anything about.
Jan, would that be the right person for AWS?
I can try.
Okay.
I can look into it as well.
Okay. Feel free to swap either of your names in. I'll put Jan down for now.
And maybe for GCE, could Chang be the primary reviewer of that?
That's actually a good idea.
Sounds good to me.
So for Azure block, Deep, let me put you down as an owner, and then we can probably remove this once you double check.
This will be part of the very long email to
Andy, yeah.
With like, here are all the 20 items that we need you to implement this quarter.
Question. So these entry plugins, we haven't traditionally flag gated things. For these topology features, do we want to flag gate as alpha, beta, GA, or just go in as GA?
I mean, if the top level feature is disabled, then
they get disabled by default.
The parameters in these provision calls won't have any values inside them.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and call it GA. I don't think we need separate features for them. They are not really separate features. They're just an extension of the existing.
Yeah. I guess the main risk is that if we end up implementing this and if there ends up being a really bad regression or something, the only way to turn it off is to turn off all of the topology feature.
Right. Yeah, and then that would fall back. Would it fall back gracefully to the existing spec?
Yes.
Okay.
But the main thing is we have to turn off like the whole high level feature instead of just turning off maybe the plugin part.
And the fact that these are cloud provider level plugins would mean that they're probably the only ones on that cluster that are consuming it. So if there's an issue with it, you turn it off. It shouldn't affect other plugins.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems reasonable. Next up is updating REPD to support the new topology framework. I forget, Chang, was this something that you signed up for?
I think this basically will almost come for free when you implement it to the number 26.
Okay.
Yeah, the two items are very, very much integrated with each other.
I think the implementation wise, you'll get both with just changing one of them, but you'll have to, but testing will need to be testing them separately.
Okay.
So
Deep, is it okay if I assign this to you?
Sure.
Okay, and work closely with Chang on that. He's very familiar with the REPD feature and can help review it and guide you in terms of testing and what needs to be done. Thank you. All right, so that is the changes to the.
I have a question, Saad.
Oh yeah, go for it, Vlad.
So is there something comparable to these tasks for CSI?
Yes.
The topology framework?
That was up.
Oh, is that the, okay, that's what that was. But this, I thought it said external.
There's the actual CSI driver implementations, and then there's also the Kubernetes CSI topology, which was like number 3 or something. Or yeah,
Okay.
number 5.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Where are we? So we just went through the entry plugins. Next up is local volume dynamic provisioning. I would call that a P2, and it looks like we already have an assignee for it, and it's mostly out of tree, so that's also good. Moving online resizing to beta. Hamath, is that something we want to do now, or do you want to give it a quarter to bake?
Sorry, I was speaking. No, I think we want to move it to beta because it's like we'll do the testing and it just
Makes sense. So I'll go ahead and remove that. Next up is implement out of trees volume snapshotter and controller. Xing and Jing will be working on this. We have updates on this. I think it's scheduled in later. I'm not sure we're going to get to it, but long story short, we went to SIG Storage last week. SIG Architecture, and presented the proposal to move the snapshot controller and API in tree. That was rejected. So we're going to keep it out of tree. Xing and Jing are currently working on revising the proposal to make it as nice out of tree as we can. Currently, the proposal is that we're going to only add this functionality to CSI, and we can do that pretty nicely with the sidecar container concept that we have today. Xing and Jing will present on that later. And so the item here is to go ahead and implement that. I'm going to call that a P1. Next up is dynamic max volume per node count to beta. Hemant implemented this last quarter. Hemant, do you want to push this to beta this quarter or wait a quarter?
Yeah, we want to move this to beta and add support for CSI, both items, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that's the next item is CSI Entry adding support for max volume count. Are you the right person to work on the CSI component as well?
Yep. Yeah.
Cool. And do we want a separate a separate feature repo issue to track the CSI one, or reuse the same one?
No, I think we'll just reuse the same one. We'll just update the proposal and we'll just use the same feature.
Okay. So let's call these both P2s.
Okay, yeah.
Who is interested in helping review this feature?
I could review it. There is some overlap with the topology stuff.
Okay. All right, so next up is CSI Entry changes, moving the Cubelet device plugin integration to beta. That went to alpha last quarter. There is a dependency on the Cubelet device plugin registration mechanism. Preferably, it would be the same person that works on both. I was thinking of having either Vlad or Sergey work on it, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide.
Yeah, I didn't put my name on there. I didn't know if Sergey was online.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about that during the CSI meeting. And
sure.
Okay. Next up is block volume support to beta, and looks like you already put your name on there, Vlad, so that looks good to me. I can help review that. And priority-wise, I would say both of these would be, do you want to call them 1 or 2?
That's definitely 1. Yeah, I would say those two are definitely 1 because they definitely need to be. We need to go back and look at the code to make sure there's any bugs or anything like that. You can put me that, yeah, right there.
Okay. Next up is inline volume support for CSI. This is something that we want to do to make it easier to use with ephemeral volumes, but we have to do it thoughtfully because there's a reason we try to avoid having inline volumes for CSI. It ends up with a lot of pain. For example, supporting topology, and I think, Michelle, we were talking about some other painful points about inlining.
I think in general, like inline volumes for persistent volumes, like just has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a way we could maybe disable inline volumes for CSI by default, and it has to be explicitly enabled.
So what Jan was proposing was basically a whitelist where a cluster admin would have to go in and actually whitelist specific CSI drivers for
that can be fine. And then we could just say in all the persistent volume drivers, we can say, you know, giant disclaimer, don't use this as inline CSI volumes in Kubernetes, otherwise nothing will work.
I have a proposal for this already open. Reviews would be nice.
Okay. So
I linked it into the meeting notes.
So feel free to throw the proposal in there. And, we'll call it alpha. And Jan, you're the right person to work on this?
Yes.
Okay. And I can help review that. All right, next up is skipping external attach, detach. This is very closely related to the next item, which is cluster plugin registration mechanism. Vlad, looks like you've signed up for both, so that looks good to me. I think, Jan, you've been very interested in this topic as well. Would you be interested in helping review?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and call that an alpha feature as well.
Will this be feature gated? I do not.
You call that alpha?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. It depends where the implementation lands. If it is out of tree, then probably not.
Yeah.
Then yes.
Yeah. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide when you're implementing it. Sorry,
this one needs to be alpha too.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. We discussed also disabling like creation of volume attachment objects for such volume types.
Yeah, so there will be a Kubernetes side to this too.
Yes, all of these are entry.
Yeah, entry.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that looks good. Next up is CSI spec change to add workload info into the node publish call. I believe, Brad, someone on your team's already working.
Yeah, Jan's chewing through this.
Nice.
Oh, okay, that's right.
Okay, and
it's really simple, right?
Probably good.
Yeah. I think the next task is related, right?
Okay. Jan, would you be interested in working on the entry changes as well, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
we'll pull you off that, Vlad.
Yep.
You could be the reviewer, and the spec change doesn't need anything. And the entry change in this case, we don't really need a feature for that. Maybe we do. I'll leave it up to you to decide. CSI external provisioner scalability issues. So I think folks have started to try to use CSI more intensively, and there are some scalability issues with the current provisioner in terms of it hammers the Kubernetes API server if you try to provision like 100 volumes at once, resulting in throttling from the API server, which results in crippling the external provisioner altogether. There's other issues like the process of retries and whether there's delete operations that happen in between or not, and what the back-off logic looks like. The external provisioner currently has a dependency on the CSI external provisioner has a dependency on the external provisioner and the external storage repo. So some of that code is shared, but basically the task here is to kind of refactor that and take a holistic look at it. I believe
I believe Matthew's already looking at this, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll put his name down. And then anybody interested in helping review this work? Brad, can I put you down as the reviewer for this?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you. Next up is conformance. There's two conformance items we have. One is for Kubernetes conformance. The other is for CSI conformance. Looks like Michelle signed up for both. I can help review this work. The idea here is in order to get the stamp of approval on a Kubernetes cluster that this is an approved implementation of Kubernetes, we have a set of tests that you must pass. We have a very minimal set of tests currently for some of the ephemeral volumes. We need to establish what the tests are for the rest of the volume framework. Michelle's already got some work started on this. And then similarly for CSI, what does it mean to be a conformance CSI plugin? So that is going to be, that's going to be fun. I'm going to call this design work, and it doesn't need an issue. In terms of priority, I'm going to call the CSI one P2 and the Kubernetes one P1. Dynamic max capacity per plugin per node. So this is an item that Michelle brought up. It's related to the max attachable volumes per node limit that we have. It turns out, at least for GCE persistent disks, that there's not only a maximum number of disks that you could attach to a node, but that limit is also affected by the capacity of those attached disks. There's a maximum capacity. So you could potentially have fewer than the max attach count and have very large disks and hit that limit. So the proposal here is to add in a similar resource to be able to count and implement that. The drawback here is we can do this pretty easily with PVCs because the capacity is available there. For inline volumes, we won't have the capacity available. So whoever works on this needs to decide what to do for that. We can decide that we're not going to do anything if you do inline volumes. But anybody interested in helping out with that issue?
Yeah, I can look into it. I think one of the things that we are planning for this quarter is like to make those limits configurable by admin. So that would help to some extent, but I think we can talk about the other implications later on in follow-up call.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. And Michelle, would you be interested in helping review that?
Yeah.
Okay, next up is provisioning capacity reporting for generic topology design. I think this is what you were mentioning, Hemant. It's a more generic way to be able to account for. Actually, I want to make sure.
No, this is for dynamic provisioning if you want to report capacity per topology. Because right now we only have a node object that represents topology. But if you had capacity limits based on rack or zone or something else, we currently have no way to report that capacity.
Right, and this would have a potential dependency on CSI as well.
Dependency on CSI.
Because CSI would need to be up. Well, it
CSI
already has a mechanism.
already has it, actually. In Kubernetes, we don't have a way to plummet.
Okay. Sounds good. Hemant, are you interested in helping review this? It's just design.
Yeah.
Cool. Next up is the CSI spec adding volume usage capacity metrics. Hemant, you already have a issue opened for this. Is this something you want to pursue this quarter?
Yep.
Cool. I'll mark that as
it's I think we need to take up this again. I think there's some concerns like whether we need this from CSI or not. I know we had a call yesterday where we kind of finalized, but there's some follow-up comments on the GitHub issue.
Okay, so maybe the conclusion will be that we will just do it independently.
We'll have to see. I think we'll have to maybe discuss next week again, or because people who are responding were not in the call yesterday. So
got it. Okay, makes sense. We'll leave that as an item for this quarter. Next up is local PV health monitoring. That's something that's been on our backlog for a very long time. We haven't had much traction on it, and it looks like Nick Wren has a proposal.
Yeah, I think it's been on our backlog too long. I think I need to just go and
review it.
Look at it, yeah.
Okay.
I think there's been more, there's also been other people that have been expressing interest in having this kind of thing. So I think the interest is picking up.
Okay. Go ahead, Hemant.
I was saying there's a CSI GitHub issue as well for this. James has opened it and might want to.
Okay. At least here we were thinking of a specific solution just for local storage at this point, but it could potentially influence maybe some things in CSI. But local storage right now is not a CSI plugin, so.
All right, cool. Next up is finalizing the migration plan for entry plugins to CSI. David and Jan have been working on this last quarter. The plan this quarter is to come up with a design that we all agree on, and then the subsequent quarter try to start implementing it, or start implementing it this quarter. It's kind of up to how quickly it gets approved. And we already have assignees there, so we're good. Next up is a refactor that we were considering for a long time. One of the areas with a lot of bugs in our mount logic today is the volume reconstruction code that tries to recover information off of orphaned mounts to make sure that it does cleanup properly. That results in a lot of issues because not all information is able to be recovered just from a mount path. The proposal here is apparently there's a Cubelet checkpointing mechanism. If we have some way to checkpoint the entire in-memory state of the Cubelet volume manager, then we can eliminate this volume reconstruction code, ideally, because the state for before and after a crash would be persisted. If anyone's interested in this, raise your hand. Otherwise, we'll leave it unassigned.
So I'd like to take a look at that since
Okay.
I've dealt with something like that before.
Cool.
And do you have any idea what the design is? Who did the design?
I don't. Take a look at that checkpointing. I think SIG
Okay.
would be the right folks. Yuju probably.
Okay.
I can help connect you with the right folks though.
Okay.
Overall, I would say this is a P3. So if other items will definitely take priority. It's just if you want and you have extra time.
Sounds good.
And I've been staring at this code because it's related to the line 48, the host path.
Yes.
It's I've been trying to figure out how to what is the best way to, because there's a lot of things we could do here, but the basic problem with fixing this bug is that you need to reconstruct the subpaths after a kubelet crash, and subpaths are a Linux specific concept. There doesn't seem to be any higher level concept, and so we need like a whole new reconciler loop to go look for orphaned subpaths, which is a lot of new code that's kind of gross.
Yeah. I think actually it's not Linux specific. Windows supports subpath too.
Well, okay, I haven't been able to find that code if it exists. Maybe it's implemented differently on Windows, and that's why I haven't found it yet.
Yeah. If you look in Mount Windows, all the subpath code is there.
Okay, maybe I should take a look at that. But there's
but actually, no, you're right. I think Windows might not have this issue. I agree.
In any case, there needs to be something that knows how to hunt for subpath mounts on volumes that are gone, and that seems like a whole new
maybe the
reconciler
answer
loop.
here is that if the checkpointing work that Vlad is doing is a viable answer for us and we can remove the reconstruction, then we don't need to fix 48 because of the work involved.
Well, host path right now bypasses all of volume reconstruction. So I think even with the checkpointing, host path would still have an issue.
How does it bypass reconstruction? Does it just ignore the call?
Like host path volumes do not do a bind mount under varlib kubelet. And right now, all of reconstruction, it only looks for volumes under varlib kubelet.
But if we have checkpointing, then ostensibly we are not losing state at any point. So reconstruction shouldn't be necessary because we should never lose the state of any host path.
It depends how cool.
It depends on the design, I guess. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know what the checkpointing can do, but I would be very surprised if it magically solves this problem. Yeah. It would be nice. It would be nice if it did, but I kind of doubt it.
Ben, can I put you down as a reviewer for the checkpointing stuff since it's so closely related?
Okay. Yeah.
It is a P3 again. I know you guys have a lot of items assigned to you, so if you need to drop something, this would be the stuff to drop. All right, next up is containerized kubelet issues. Brad, you mentioned you had someone that was going to own this.
Yeah, we're piece by piece going through this. We've stepped into stuff with Flex on containerized, and that's driving some of the conversation also. But
okay,
truth be told, we don't have like one person who's focused on this as an architecture. It's still somewhat fragmented.
Okay. I'm going to leave that assigned to you for now, and then as you get more clarity, maybe you can break this out into individual items with sub-owners.
Yeah, that sounds good. I might just end up owning this for the storage portion of this anyways.
Okay.
Going forward.
So you might get these bugs assigned to you then, and then you can redirect them accordingly.
Okay.
All right, next up is delete iSCSI devices on unmount.
This is just a bug fix that's waiting for
yes, that's waiting for me and Jan. Okay.
I haven't done anything with it.
Okay. Jan, can you take a look at this PR when you get a chance?
I can, but my iSCSI knowledge is quite limited.
Okay. Brad, could we get Wamin to take a look at this?
Sure.
Yeah, which issue is it? What's the?
It's this one right here. Delete iSCSI devices on unknown. I can put a comment here to.
And we have customers that are like hitting this bug and
So we
saying,
should get this
please fix it.
Well, yeah.
Who was that? Was that you, Ben?
This is Ben. Yeah, NetApp has customers using iSCSI, and they are suffering pain from the way that Kubernetes is attached.
Could you fix it? I mean, could you provide the fix for it?
Yeah, there's a bug and there's a PR that fixes the bug.
Okay,
We just need to merge the PR.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a look at that.
All right, cool. Thank you. We're over time, but just a handful of other items to go through. Provide environment variable expansion. This was a feature that went into alpha last quarter. Is this something that we're ready to drive to beta, or do you want to give it another quarter to bake?
No team wanted us to come up with some like long-term direction plan for this.
Okay.
And to evaluate, because we did a very targeted implementation for alpha. So I think they want us to evaluate if something more generic could be done, and if not more generic, then we should come up with some guidelines or something.
So evaluate a generic option for environment variable expansion currently implemented as alpha for subpath. This would be design. I'd call this a P3. Is Kev Taylor still the right person to investigate that?
Maybe. I'm
okay.
not sure. I'll follow up with him.
Okay, cool. I'll put a question mark there, and then we can follow up. Prepare CSI for GA in Q4. This is mostly just as an informative. It's a very aggressive target, but I'd like to see if we can hit GA for CSI in Q4. If not, we'll have to slip to Q1 of next year, but I know a lot of people are waiting on it. So this is mostly informative. We can probably just push that down to the bottom. Kubernetes Conformance, Michelle's already agreed to help drive that. And then pluggable end-to-end test framework. So if you look at the end-to-end tests that we have in storage today, they basically are rewritten for every single volume plugin. And that's pretty inconvenient, considering that most of them kind of do the same exact set of things. So if we could come up with a framework that will allow you to write the test once and then plug in different types of either entry or CSI plugins, that would be extremely valuable.
This will probably be necessary to make a conformance suite as well.
Yes. So Patrick pinged me right before this meeting as being interested in helping drive this. I'm writing down design as the goal for this quarter, but depending on how things move, we may get some sort of implementation here. And that is all that I have for the 1.12 planning. Is there anything else anybody wants to add to this list? We have a lot of items. Okay, and if you have an item assigned to you and the feature repo bug is red, please make sure you open a bug before the feature repo issue deadline. And that is all that I have for today. For the design reviews, let's punt them to next week. If they are super important, set up one-off meetings. I know Jing, I think you wanted to set up a meeting this coming Monday or Wednesday at 9 a.m.
Hi, this is Xing. Jean says she has to be offline for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are the two times I'd like to set up for next week. So should we send out a survey on this, or should we just decide here?
I'd say we could just decide here. It'll be easier than getting people to reply to an email. 9 a.m. Wednesday is a bad time because the container storage interface community meeting is at that time.
Oh, okay.
9 a.m. Monday works for me. Or 9 a.m. Tuesday also works for me.
Okay.
So yeah, feel free to throw out something on people's calendars, and we can get that conversation started there.
Okay. All right. Okay. We'll just pick Monday. Yes.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Did anyone say something? Okay. All right.
Okay. Cool.
We'll send out an invite. Okay. Thank you.
Jan, we'll revisit these items next week. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So that's all I have on the agenda today. Thank you very much. And I will see you in 2 weeks. All right. Take care.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.